Okay, welcome back. We're gonna get started in 1 minute. So hopefully you're back and we're going to chat. Just a reminder, this is a third segment of our office hour, and my name is Anna Goldman, and I'm a QI specialist with Innovation and Improvement Center for Emergency Medical Services for Children EMC Center. We are excited to see you this morning, this office hour. And hopefully you're coming back from our quick break. This office hour is packed with some great opportunities and great ways of looking at your projects, and hopefully something you can take away. I do want to ask everyone, can you see my screen that says 10-minute break on top of it?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Just want to make sure um, everyone is seeing it. And this recording is a recording. This meeting is recorded, so we can go ahead and post it on our website, and you can come back to it at any time. We will also share it at the end with everyone who registered. Some week today, sometime this week or beginning of next week. I'm hoping, Hannah, right? Is that our plan? All right.
Yes, probably
Per-
next week.
Yeah, yeah. All right. But it will be posted for extended period of time, and you want to check out our website. It will be under the office hours of August 13th. So with that, quick reminder, this didactic part is meant to be for 30, 35 minutes max. And then hopefully there's a discussion or ideas that you'd like to share that you've experimented with, and we are looking for your feedback. And there will be an evaluation of this hour at the end. Please do take the time and give us your feedback so we can tailor our education based on this. All right, with no longer further ado, so looking at quick reminder of, improvement cycles and model for improvement. We know that we always want to start with ideas of what do we want to try to accomplish, right? Where is the ship going? What destination is it going to reach, right? So have that in mind. So, how will we know the change is an improvement? That's where the data and the measurement element comes into mind, right? How do we begin knowing the baseline where we at right now so we can see the progress to help us make a decision if what we're doing, what our actions and our improvement efforts are actually making a difference, right? And then what changes can we make that will result in improvement? As we all probably very well aware, sometimes we make changes that some people say change for the sake of change, right? There's no data to back that information up or to say, okay, we really did make an impact. So and I encourage to use this model as a framework, similarly to what we discussed in the beginning at 9 o'clock about how this could be viewed as in your everyday scenarios. And then plan, do, and study, act cycle is something that we use in this model to help us decide whether the change is actually an improvement, and how can we iterate or make tweaks to what we're looking to do. So with that in mind, selecting an appropriate intervention could be tricky sometimes. But it needs to start with brainstorming, and usually with a group of people who kind of have an idea of what we are going to do. Remember, no idea is a bad idea. Generate as many ideas as possible. What we often talk about as key drivers is actually having a number of ideas about your improvement or your hypothesis for improvement. Um, Identified and then grouping it. So if you have a number of ideas like For improvement in education, for example, we can look in to identify, okay, is this going to be tailored to the patient? Is this going to be tailored to physicians, to nurses? What do we need to have? Do we implement our um, environmental scan, or rather looking into baseline knowledge? How do we know that what we educate is even useful, right? So having those ideas kind of bunch up together, those will represent our key drivers. We do have key driver office hour recorded, guys, so you can always come back to it and take a look at that. um, Using a time limits and groups is helpful so people know what to expect. And we often use what we call sticky notes, one idea per note, that would allow you to then grouping them together. We've had a wonderful exercise in Cleveland, what we call an affinity diagram drafting, that use this kind of technique. Being concise. With the causes and the ideas will help. Sometimes groups do struggle as to identify like the most important theme. So use vote. Sometimes, not one not one intervention on one, not one theme is as close to the heart. You have to, if you have a group, which you should in this kind of circumstances, you vote, right? And so we use that voting process. But then it becomes important to say, okay, now that we think we have this wonderful ideas, um, and how do we organize our thoughts? And one way to do this, if voting may be not an option, or voting is several people wanting to do something at the same time, this, believe it or not, happens. You can use this effort impact matrix that we've actually used a lot on our on number of our projects, where you rate each idea one at a time. So, for example, you have an idea about education of the provider, and you say, okay, we have identify our key stakeholder who's going to help us implement this um, um, survey, so educational survey. So is that something that is and so is that survey something that is a challenge because we don't have a stakeholder? There's much more steps into it. Is it something that we can put in high effort, high impact category, or is it something we can just do it because we have stakeholders who can help us and engage with us? So that's a low effort then and high impact. So we'll see how one idea could be put in various boxes, but that's for your team and for your group is to decide. So this may be a short cycles of trying to do something that will bring some fruitful information, and we can, get jumped our process for low impact, for high impact and low effort. For high effort and high impact, that's the example where I talked about, like, we want to implement the survey, but we have no stakeholders. So this becomes really like a long project that we has prior steps that we haven't thought about. And then another is a low impact and low effort is take a look and see, evaluate. Well, we did the PDSA cycles, we just did it, right? And so looking at analysis of it, it looks to be like it's a possibility. So we can move on with this idea, with this intervention. And then some of the ideas is, after this, you're completing this PDSI cycle and recognizing, okay, that was not as we thought it would be. So we might need to abandon it, something that we call out, or outsource it. And actually, something comes in mind right away is, oh, I jumped ahead of myself. Um, Comes in mind right away. We've identified, worked with a group of individuals and identified a list of how, well, not how to, but more of a resource we can provide to families and providers, with just list of outpatient services that are available for mental health. And originally, the idea started, and we thought, oh, let's just do it. Let's just sit down and do it. But then we wanted to make sure that this list has uh, services listed at each provider location, and not only services for kids listed, but then services for parent that might be applicable that are listed. And so we put all these great ideas together and started creating this a list that ended up being over 200 resources as we just listing it. And we thought, okay, well, it probably won't will be more than will take more than just our group of people who are engaged, but engaged partially. So meaning it's not their full-time position to do this kind of work, and we're recognized to learn about these resources. We had to actually not only go online but call the services to find out what they provide because some of the information was missing. So that took us about, I would say, a couple of weeks to recognize that, oh, we thought it was just do it, but then we needed to engage more stakeholders. So we reached out to thank goodness we had a social work department who said, all right, we already have a list in place. All we need is direction as to like what additional information you need on it. So what I'm saying is this could be fluid. It can go from, oh, this is great. Let's do the PDSA cycle and it's a low effort and high impact. But then you realize, oh, this is a little bit more than we originally thought. So that's one way of deciding which intervention to go with first, and to help the group brainstorm. Just putting it out here as a blank slide for anybody who would like to work after the fact and use this matrix, so it's available to you. We also have just a quick reminder in office hour where we dissect how this could be done with one of the exemplar in the projects that we did with one of our hospitals. So please take a look at that. And then this slide I wanted to point out as it's going to become important. And I think up till several months ago, I haven't really recognized it as an importance of it. Often we have great ideas. We think we've implemented them. And then a few months from that point, we find out, oh, we thought that everybody knew, but no, we recognize that nobody's following our process. We recognize that we've educated, but people still don't know. We put rules and policies into place, but um, it's not working. So to help us kind of frame the sustainability of our efforts. There's this hierarchy of intervention and effectiveness of our interventions. And I'd like to point out that, and it's a great framework to kind of have in mind. Um, so this is coming from the medical and I think engineering field actually. This is a hodgepodge of all of it in the QI work. Where it's looking at, as you see the arrow on the side where it says more effective, less effective. So what there are many agencies figured out that the um, more automation we bring in our lives, the more simplification and standardization, the more effective intervention will become. And more likely all are going to be able to use it. So as you see, the simplification and automation is more system focused interventions where it's taken away that opportunity of an individual to make a mistake. As we know, mistakes or I would say opportunities is a very pertinent to human beings, as we all are. So something that is person has to remember or rely on their memory to do. usually is not as effective. Not that I'm saying that this is the only ways to go, but what I'm saying is pointing in this conversation here today is that having rules and policies and nobody's being aware of them is also not a way to implement or rather sustain something, right? Having it on the other hand automated, like a pop-up on the reminder on the chart or the phone or other ways, is a much more effective way of sustaining our changes. So just remember that. I also do know many folks are using reminders, checklists, and double checks. That's kind of, as you see there, in the middle of the people focused and somewhat medium effective, right? So where education and training is all the way at the bottom. Just wanted to point this out of sustaining the changes, and that is why sometimes it's so difficult, right? Um, Now, I know Jen mentioned in previous office hour time this morning about different PMHCAs who have implemented consultation lines and variety of programs, and have been doing this for years. So what you find with those like NC STEP, uh, who is our partner, and then VMAP from Virginia, what you find with those organizations, there's a lot of simplification and standardization. Their forms are standard online for provider to sign up for education. You have a process to follow for almost that is outlined and printed out and available, so it automatically pops up when you ask a question on the website, for example. And it's something that is it took them some time to get there, but that's what it takes to sustain organizational efforts. So wanted to spend a little bit of time of that on that. Do you guys have any examples from your personal experiences where you're finding this to be the truth or accurate information for sustaining change efforts? I'm not hearing none, so I'm going to move on. However, do want to say that we uh, hospitals are often a a lot of a layer and a lot of employees organization, and we do have challenges of even keeping people aware of the policies and updated guidelines and so forth. So that's resonates very much with the organization that we interface, and now knowing that is why it is so difficult to implement and sustain some of the efforts. All right. Now we're going to move on into the process mapping. And you might ask me why. Why do we need to process map what we're about to do? Well, and it's not my quote, but if we cannot describe what we are doing as a process, we don't know what we're doing, right? So if we don't have a preliminary steps, at least, of how this is going to look like, um, it's going to be difficult to describe to somebody else or even to yourself, and keep that in your head as something conceptual that you can grasp. So it's very, 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 and I'm understanding this more as I'm providing this TA, very beneficial to us to put some of the processes into place on the paper. And so that's what we'll call, you're basically making the steps and putting them on the paper. Simple as that. And then it is to help us identify the short-term goals, the long-term goals, how will we begin, what approach will we take. And so process maps have a um, specific ways of identifying our steps usually, and this is where the shapes become important. So as you see, the start and the end, they're either round or oval, and then steps of the process are usually rectangular looking, and then you have a diamond of decision making is usually when we have to say yes or no. That helps us kind of delineate our process. So it will help when you once you put the map like this together, it will help you and then your team identify the structural needs, identify key steps, decision points, and identify potential outcomes. Where do we want to end? Um, and so with that, I have a few examples that I wanted to share today. One example is that is a hypothetical example, but we find it very good, very useful when we work in groups. And putting an example like this identifies an out, yeah, identifies the step of the process. For example, this one is a very high level awareness of PMHCA's resources for PCPs in schools. This is how this high level can look like. Now, as I'm talking within a group of individuals, you probably will say, well, you missed this, or well, you need to add this. And that is great because this is a team effort. So by drawing it out and having steps to the process and the decision points helps the group identify, uh, is this our process? Is this where we're going? And if no or yes, are we missing any steps? Right? Because then it helps you. And if you have many decision points, like this one in the middle has three, right? That gives you the complexity at which individuals will have to, go through sometimes to see what will and what will not work. And sometimes you have more than three decision points, right? Out of that one diamond, and helps you say, okay, this is really complex. There's a lot of steps here, and so can we make it so it's a little bit less complex? That may be another thought going through your head. Okay, so going through this is you would, as you guys know, we all about QI. So finalizing your smart aim, where you want to go, defining the audience, and developing key content talking points is probably something we want to start with, right? When we are connecting with PCPs in schools. Determine our best mode of communication. Um, what would it look like? Would we have a flyer? Would we have social media campaign? Will we host a webinar or town hall? What would work best? And then in looking at, did we reach the attended audience? Did we reach the schools? Did we reach the PCP offices? If no, we go back to the drawing board, right? And again, reevaluate, how did we communicate? And if we did, yes, then we good to go. It's a yes. So that is one. Diagram, or a map you can even start thinking of using with your teams. Another one is a little bit more complex, and it's providing consultations to the ED teams. This is the high level of how this could look like. Of course, it's missing steps. This is really conceptual ways, but what it does demonstrate, if you look at this map, is that look at the decision point, number two. Did the guidance meet the needs of the ED team? Look at how many uh, connections goes into it, right? And where the opportunities for improvements could be. So it's a little bit more complex diagram, but it tells you, where opportunities of learning can occur and where improvement work can take place as well. Now you can take a look at this and say, oh, we don't do it this way, and that is fine. So draw out the way you would want to do it. Remember, we talked about mentorship. Come into your mentor with the idea in the map in mind and say, this is how we think it will do it, and we will do it. And they'll tell you, oh, wait a minute, you missed this, 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 and this, right? So having this process mapped out and available at your first mentor mentee PMHCA to PMHCA working together. that's a great way to start a conversation, right? Because you thought of your a process, you came in to prepare. That tells me that you're engaged and you're ready to go, right? So here I can, and it helps me visualize where you might be having opportunities to maybe beef up some stuff, maybe understand a little bit um, resources, what is missing, so I can ask the questions then that will guide your work. So that's another way of process mapping that is high level enough, but it'll allow your team to um, start delineating the next steps, kind of pushes the process forward. So I'm going to pause here for a second. Other questions? Have you done something like this with your team? Well, I know, Hannah, you have.
Try to recall.
Well, we did something like this at the conference in July with
Yeah,
teams
this is
and
Dina.
Yes.
So like, oh, you have Jocelyn? Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I just was wondering if there's if you would recommend a certain kind of like template or software for developing this kind of map.
Go
that's a
back to
great
Anna
question.
to that. Yeah, go back to
Yes.
the really simple one. So I thought we included something like that in our workbook from the meeting. Go back one more. Jocelyn, like to this, like to your question, and then I'll let Anna add in too. I have always, because I use this quite often to understand, especially if it's something that we're trying to change a process or even establish. I use this very simply. I have like a little, circle for start. I have my squares, and I just have them on um, a Word document, and then I just plug away. So it can really be that simple. Like my start might be, you know, maybe you want to establish, like I think what was on Anna's, a way to do triage call with, yeah, you can use PowerPoint. And then you just say, step one, okay, well, we received the intake call, and then you do your steps. And then when you have a decision, like you could even do this with suicide risk screening. So maybe the start point is that a patient comes in and has been coming in for a psychiatric complaint. So your first step is that you have to like screen the patient for suicide risk, and what are you going to use? You figure out what scale you're going to use. And then if your decision becomes the patient screens, moderate or high risk, then what are you going to do? What's step two? And you just take it through this process till you get to your endpoint. And I call them storm clouds or opportunity clouds. Those are really nice too, because then it gives you the things that you might want to work on or might become your interventions. I really like this very simple tool here. So either in PowerPoint or in Microsoft Word.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
then yes, you're welcome. And one way I'm like depending on the communication mode, right? So I find it and I would imagine that many of us work in a virtual world, meaning on Zooms. So I think like Visio is a great
Yeah.
tool but I don't think it's you have to look at I'm not sure what pricing, and is there something that is free with Visio, but then maybe an organization already has Visio and is part of their portfolio for electronic tools to use. But PowerPoint has like you
Mhm.
insert little shapes and edit the text. That's a great way to communicate. Now, if you are in person, if you have like face-to-face meetings, so Dina, yeah, that's a great opportunity to just and she suggested that just a piece of paper and draw it
Yeah.
out. And maybe, if we are in the like meeting like environment, I have people draw out circles and rectangles and decision points
Mhm.
and diamonds, and then we kind of compare and work together if this is one team or if this is similar or different teams, but working on a similar theme to see where, oh, we don't even have this step.
Yep.
I'm involved in collaborative right now, a different collaborative that's working in follow-up appointments for mental health in our state, and they're drawing some mapping that I'm looking at them and I'm saying, all right, you guys, that's great, but this step doesn't exist. Like, so how do we help us get there to even create this step in the process? But it does give that visual of thinking of next steps for each party, kind of. So great question about what to use, but it could vary really, and don't make it hard.
Yeah, and if
Make
you're
it easy.
doing it, Jocelyn, I'd say keep it simple. If you're gonna do it via like Zoom or Microsoft Teams, I just pull this up in like, either even in PowerPoint, or I'll pull it up in Word. And then as people go through and I'm just hearing their train of their thoughts, their stream of thoughts, I just start creating the boxes, and then we just review it and see if we've captured it correctly. And it seems to work very effectively.
Yeah. Thank you. This is a great question. All right. All right. So this brings me to the next steps of the process that we could use. This is not the only step. There are many others. Tools are available, but I thought I'd share it because I feel it's simple enough. And this is looking at, so once you have this wonderful map mapped out and you wanted to dissect and look at, and then you're looking back and seeing, okay, what did we possibly miss? I create a hypothetical scenario that might help us to kind of go through the process, and we call it as a 5 whys method. As anybody who has kids know, they always ask why. So this is kind of following the same theme, but kind of helps us get to the root cause of a problem sometimes. And in a way, it does it. It's literally identifying the problem and asking those 5 whys to identify the root of that problem. And then I actually took from the previous map and say, okay, well, if hypothetically we have an unhappy ED provider who complains about something that they haven't gotten, how this could look like. Um, and with this, what to keep in mind is usually we tend to come back to the beginning of the process, actually, of our map to identify, okay, this was our point of where we needed to make it user friendly, right? So, for example, in this scenario, we have a provider who complains, and AD team did not receive needed guidance. Why they didn't receive this guidance is because the PMHCA team had no essential information to provide needed guidance, and that essential information that was missing was patient's age. Was not available. So we go back to our intake demographics form and recognize that that field is missing. And furthermore, this field is not enforced. There's not a hard stop or mandatory field to say that you have to include patient's age. And so if you look through this scenario, this helps you um, kind of analyze back as to, okay, so remember how the age was important here for providers to provide the important information, the pertinent information to the EDs. Well, if we go back through this process and the age is not available, then we going back to determining a category of consultation, and it takes us back to the intake form, which did not have a mandatory field, right, enforced field. So That's just one example of how can we dissect and evaluate the problem or the issue. And can be used in many scenarios and simple enough to kind of take the team or even by yourself having this as a thinking model as to why there are some opportunities, and when they are identified, how can we get to the root cause of them. All right, I'm going to pause this just for a little bit. Any questions? Anybody use something like this in their real life situations um, and like to share? All right, hearing that.
Anna, we used it before with in the ED for like triage. We had patients like we had 2 safety type events where I used to work where patients were sitting in the lobby and ended up seizing, and the other one was a really bad asthmatic. So we worked with our frontline staff and went through the 5 whys.
Great.
Why was the patient sitting in the lobby? Well, because the registration, check the patient in. Well, why did they do that? Because the nurse was in a side room. So we took it through this whole, process. And then this really helped us to drive a process map and develop a change where our patients during the busiest time period from 3 to 11 would have hands-on by a nurse. They wouldn't see registration first because we found that there was too much vulnerability with a patient decompensating in the triage or the waiting room. But we used 5 whys for that.
Oh, that's an excellent example. Thank you, Gina.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, never mind. I was thinking when I read press releases, but it's a little more different. It's more of the 5 W's and the H.
Anybody else? Yeah, I've used 5 whys a lot when we had a patient's complaints in the hospitals. And it was a quick and dirty ways of getting to the root cause and then identifying the improvement opportunity. So it's a very helpful. I found it very helpful. All right, so we are going to go ahead and switch our gears a little bit and talk about change, my favorite subject. And at this part of our office hours, this is just going to be beginning and the kind of touching of the iceberg. The change management is a huge topic that we will not be able to cover today, but I thought we cannot talk about all the improvement work and project work without recognizing that change could be difficult. And so with that, so how do we actually start the change? How do we start the movement? I have a little video that I'm hoping some of you have seen, and this is going to be just fun to watch. Hopefully this will work. It kind of shows how people get motivated with some of the actions around them. So hopefully it will play and you guys can hear it. I pushed it, so all right. Great. Yay. All right. Tell me if you can't hear it, you guys. It's still loading though.
Can't hear it. You probably have to do share audio.
Oh, okay. You can't hear it? Okay, because it is playing. All right, I don't want to do that. How do I share the audio?
On Zoom.
Yeah. Let's see. Anybody has ideas?
What are your share screen options? I think that's where it is.
Share. I am on share screen option. So share screen. It is sharing. Okay. Huh.
I know there's a way to do it when you launch the video to share audio.
Okay. All right. Well, it's okay. We'll just keep. We'll just give the. How about now? Did you hear anything?
Nope.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, the theory of the and I encourage you to guys watch it. Is a dancing guy who, in the middle of the crowd, begins and start moving around, and so the crowd is what it takes is one person to follow this person who does this crazy dancing moves, and then the whole crowd is cheering and dancing together. And this may be something that you've watched before with change theory, but this is my favorite, so I like to show it. So we'll share the link after the presentation. So with that, just to give a little bit of a background as why is change is so difficult. So what is really motivating people to do the change, right? And in this video, it is obviously there that nobody's being dragged or or paid to do the dance. Um, so those are great examples of intrinsic motivations, and that is the stronger motivations. And those consist of um, uh, certain things that are described here: purpose, mastery, and autonomy. This is for adults motivation, so it doesn't apply to kids, just so it's all clear. So how they motivation experts break out these interests, intrinsic domains into three components: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And autonomy is our desire to be self-directed. It is in the core of many trainings of the professions. The buck stops with you. Many healthcare professionals are trained to make autonomous decisions. Like thinking of myself and my colleague Gina, other folks who are maybe social workers, and many perceive themselves as single providers working independently. Um, Autonomy increases engagement over compliance, and then mastery, the urge to improve your skills, right? I wanted to be better um, in my expert field. When you masters your job, it becomes routine, and routine brings a sense of stability and comfort. And then purpose, the desire to be something meaningful and important, to do something meaningful and important. Um, those are maybe global purposes, such as help people, care for patients, improve health, population health, or individual purpose. So both in work and life situations. So this is just to give you a background as to why people want to change or not so much. And so with that, this model, Everett Rogers model, has explains the diffusion of innovation theory, that innovators, and take a look at this wonderful graph. It's only 2.5, right? That's not a lot of folks that wanted to innovate and change vigorously. So keep that in mind next time you wanted to implement something new or try changing things. So the innovators, they're the quickest to adopt an innovation. However, they may be seen as a little bit of too fast and too quick for change, and the trust may be in opportunity there. Then the early adopters, so still 13.5%, not too many, right? But they're the more mainstream within the community, or they're often characterized by acceptance of innovation and um, some personal financial resources to be able to adopt the innovation. So they are maybe our sponsors of the ideas of an iPhone, right? Or sponsors of the idea of some of the protective equipment that we've been trying in the hospitals. So those are early adopters. And then we have early maturity. That's 34% piece. Amiable to change and persuaded to the benefits of the innovation, and by observing, right? So they're kind of looking, oh, I'm going to join you, but maybe I'll see what's happening. In the late majority, there are the skeptics, right? A reluctant to change, adopt. Or I often call them a late adopters. That's the late majority. So when they are just, there's a movement and they just want to be part of it, want to be accepted of that movement. And then we have the last category, which is 15%. Those, they are very conservative, they're resistant to change, and sometime when we have to accept it, they may never change. Okay. And that is okay. It is only 15% on the bigger scheme of things. So just wanted to keep this in mind as we're working on our changes. All right. And then the diffusion change, this is where the tipping point is, and that is the tipping point of your innovation or your change project is when you got those early adopters. Then you are half there. Just to point this out, you have halfway arrived. So keep that in perspective as you're implementing your changes. People are having those tendencies and kind of putting them in perspective of the things. Do you want to remind you, we have an office hour and webinar coming up on August 27th from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern time. And this is going to be on safety planning and disposition with Dr. Burkhardt. Please save the date, put this on your calendar. We'll be sending invites shortly. I wanted to open the floor for questions for next 5 minutes, and then we're going to put up a poll. Please complete this, as it will help us to gauge and plan our activities in the future. And with that, I'm going to give it a little bit of time.